Welcome to the Oroville City Council meeting of June 1st, 2021. I'm calling this meeting to order. We are just reconvening from closed session where direction was given and no action was taken. Will you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Looking for a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Moving on to presentations and proclamations, we have one presentation for Randy Chapman, retiring as Planning Commissioner. Couldn't memorize it that quick.
Oh, no, sorry.
Today, I have the pleasure of honoring Randy Chapman for his many years of service on the Oroville Planning Commission. Randy served as a volunteer commissioner from July 2008 to December 2020. During his 10-plus years on the commission, Randy has provided insight and wisdom on many different projects, from new apartments, new businesses, new subdivisions, new housing, the hospital expansion, new medical complexes, and so much more. Randy's dedication, knowledge, and enthusiasm for on-commission items did not go unnoticed. As mayor, it is my honor to present you this plaque on behalf of the City Council in recognition and appreciation for your dedicated service to the City of Oroville. Thank you for your many years of service to our community. Anybody want to get a picture of it? Thank you, Randy.
Honor.
You wish to say anything? Speech.
Thank you. It's an honor. There's a lot of people that probably deserve this more than I do, but I could say I think I'm leaving the city in a better position. We got a real great city council. Your current planning commission is fantastic. Staff level, Bill, Wes. There's a buzz going around town, actually all over the state, that Oroville is open for business. And I love seeing that. Being in the real estate business, I think we've never been at a more proactive time in the city, in the 12 years I've been helping with the city level. So I'm honored. Thank you.
If I could, Randy, just one last thing. You're wrong. You do deserve it. I mean, Randy has been a very positive influence on all of us. He's always positive. He comes with a good attitude. He's, very proactive about Oroville. He's been a good friend. He's been a good commissioner. And I just want to personally thank you, Randy. I mean, you're somebody I look to as a role model. I mean, so.
Now that you're not on the planning commission, you can run for city council.
Here you go, Jackie.
Thank you.
Roll off. Okay, public communication. This is a time for the hearing of non-agenda items. Each individual will have 2 minutes to speak on non-agenda items. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone who wishes to speak?
Mr. Mayor, our first speaker is the cameraman.
Wow, first one speaking tonight. Good evening, Oroville City Council. Good to see everybody's faces here. Hopefully, this is the last month we'll have to deal with any of this glass and mask and go back to somewhat normalcy. You know, supposedly, as our governor says, it's all going to end at the end of the month, but we'll see. I'd just like to briefly touch on a closed session tonight. I know no action was taken, but, you know, just kind of this whole thing about the police chief and closed session and the fire department's all out and the public. And from my understanding, it's a dual position here where it's both the fire chief and chief of police, or that's going to change. But I just would like to see some more of this matter of the police chief on the public agenda, rather it be in closed session. I'd rather see some more public documentation on the agenda of that matter being discussed. And briefly, with the 1 minute remaining, I would just like to say I went to a candlelight vigil for a gentleman who was recently murdered in South Oroville a couple weeks ago over the weekend, and it's another tragedy in our community. There's been quite a lot of death recently in this community over the past month or so, and it's kind of sad that to see, you know, this is a lovely community. We got some great people here. I mean, we got bad apples. Everybody's got them, you know. There's no shame in admitting we have some problems, but, you know, it's dealing with those and working with those problems to make them better than ignoring them is the point here. So the brief seconds I have left, I'd just like to take a moment of silence for the recent lives we've had lost in our community.
Our next speaker is Steve Terry.
Good evening, City Council, Mr. Mayor. Had a lot of things that ran through my mind what I would speak about today in my limited time, but I guess something that disturbed me recently, I have now joined the ranks of being lied about, Mr. Mayor. I had literally somebody recently it's come to my attention that someone's made the comment that the only reason I was interested in protesting to deal with CAL FIRE was because of Water Tender 3, which I've made no bones about. I have a dog in the show. Always said that, always will say that. But the fact of the matter is, and it was stated that if Water Tender 3 could be a part of this deal and stuff, and I could stay on it, then I'd be perfectly willing to accept the CAL FIRE deal. So here, let me state it. It's a lie. I don't know who said it. It's a lie. It's a bad deal. I'm still going to say it. I understand that the firefighters put in a letter. I also understand they had no choice, because if they're going to maintain a position to negotiate, they have no choice. And so the fact is that we're going to spend a lot of money, and when we spend this money, we're going to have a choice: red, black, or blue ink for the check. That's it. Our charter calls for us to appoint a fire chief. That won't happen. It'll no longer happen. That'll be up to CAL FIRE. Our charter calls for the fire chief to answer the city council. That won't happen. You may have a battalion chief. They won't answer to the city council. They'll answer to CAL FIRE. The fact of the matter is there's a lot of things about this that are bad, and there's a lot of money that's going to be spent. And it's a bad deal, and I don't care if I stay on Water Tender 3 or not. It's a bad deal.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Bobby O'Reilly.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. There we go. Good evening. Number 3 of the, I guess, as is said most of the time, the 5 individuals who speak up, usually about nothing at city council meetings. We may be 5, but damn, we're loud. My non-agenda item tonight is the 2 minutes for public comment and the starting at 4:30. There was a time not so long ago before the fresh council that the times had been moved to accommodate the working class, those of us who may have children, jobs, to make a little more convenience. Also, the time had been moved to 3 minutes rather than the short time. With a 4:30 start time and a 2-minute comment time, how much opinion or input do we as citizens who voted you folks in, do we really have? I'm almost out of time already, and if I had a very important thing to say to you guys at this time, which I will have here coming up very shortly, there's not enough time to get what I'm trying to say out, and then the individual starts rushing and getting bombarded with the time expiring and then getting cut off, and then we're not heard. So I please urge the council to move back to an appropriate time and give us the appropriate amount of time to make comment to you, because if we have something to say, no matter who it is, we want you to hear it. And the only way that you hear it beyond a 2-minute span for that topic is if a precedent set that night and somebody's allowed to continue to talk. That may not happen for everybody. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Gary Norwood.
The mayor, city council members, I'm here on behalf of the Native Sons of the Golden West to try to start a discussion about reacquiring the Pioneer Museum, which we used to own. We gave it to the city many years ago, but the Pioneer Museum needs help. We're in a place where we can help it now, which the Argonaut parlor that was running it before, they got it all in their 80s and they couldn't do it anymore. That's the reason the city ended up with it, right? We're in a position to upgrade it. We want to put a real elevator in it for handicapped access. We want to do an extension on the top floor, a 10 to 20 foot extension, and enlarge the museum. We have access to period correct wood, right, to do this so that it remains constant in the way it looks. I agree with you. 2 minutes ain't enough time. I think ADA access is probably one of the biggest ticket items. I understand they did put a lift down the stairs, but there's no handicap parking there. So how does a handicap guy get in there when you got 8-inch steps to get up? Right, it doesn't make any sense. Right, so we have plans for that. We want to turn the park. We want to do some upgrades in the park, which is the area between the museum and the Veterans Hall, right, which is also part of the same plot of land. We want to do some upgrades there so we can have events there, weddings, birthdays, parties, turn it into a nice park. I'm almost out of time. I apologize. I'm trying to get through this. I did submit the letter to go into the official record. So I am up here to ask for your support. Thank you.
Our next public speaker is Bill Spear.
I agree. I think a little more time would be beneficial in a lot of cases. And also 4:30 is a really hard time to make it here for people at work. But the reason I come is to pray for you all. Thank you all for your service and dedication to our city. And we need prayer more than ever with the heat and the fire season. And so, Father, we thank you for all your public servants, for our fire department, for the police, and all of those who put their lives on the line. And we just pray your protection for our city. We pray for your favor. We pray for wisdom for our city council as they make tough decisions, that you would be with them, that you would give them that wisdom from heaven. We pray for your protection for our police officers and our firefighters as they're out on the front lines. For all those who serve and give, we pray your protection for their families. We pray for the businesses as we begin to reopen and try to get back to normal. We do need your supernatural favor to make it so our families can provide for ourselves and for our city to grow. We thank you that you are always there. You never leave us nor forsake us. We love you. We praise you. We give you all the glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Our next speaker is Kay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I want to speak tonight about something very exciting that happened at the last Parks Commission meeting. Mr. Brian Wong came and presented to us an idea about using some of our historic or artifacts that are in storage and using them to cross-promote and to promote's a good word, get a synergy developed between our history and our museums and our town and our restaurants and our historic district. And it's a really interesting idea that an artifact that could be in storage, not being seen at the moment, could be displayed right now at the first plan is the Union. Yes, a lot of discussion happened about the historical value of the item. How would it be displayed safely, hermetically sealed and climate controlled and out of light? A lot of discussion went on, but it was super positive, and I believe it's a great idea. What I did not think of at the time that I thought about afterwards is that Mr. Wong is offering to pay all of the costs associated with transporting, housing, building display cases, etc. for these items. It's a great idea if the items could be taken in and out of a specific case, but those cases are going to be specifically built for that item. I'd like to see us as a city with our historical preservation in our funds to help the Wongs to have this idea so it could be a traveling exhibit for the city. We invest as a city in the display. We then have some control and some say in how it could travel around.
Mr. Mayor, that is the last of the public speakers for non-agenda items.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the consent calendar, I'm looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar, pulling
Mr.
item
Mayor?
number 3.
Yes, sir.
I do have one public speaker on item 8 of the consent calendar.
Okay, can we hear him?
Bobby O'Reilly.
Two minutes. I like you as a friend and a person. However, as a mayor, Mr. Mayor, you are failing this community. I mean no personal disrespect. However, this must be said. If we don't have community members to stand up, who will? Apparently, not some on this council. Also, just to throw it out there, there are more than, as you claim, 5 of us that care about this city that come here and step up and speak. We're just the ones that have the gall to stand up publicly and loud for what's right. You have pushed the firefighters into a corner where now they have no choice but for their association, not the firefighters, as you claimed, not the fire department, as you claimed today on video, the association to write a letter in support. The firefighters are personally still not in agreement with the transition, but they have no other choice unless they want to change their careers. You continue the creative use of wording and lies, which is completely uncalled for and unnecessary. You claim only 5% of the public cares about the topic, but you're wrong. Why are things moving forward with a switch before a decision has been made officially? For instance, dispatch. Not many know it's scheduled for dispatch to transition over to CAL FIRE. There's been no discussion. There's been no resolution made by this council to do move forward, other than the sly backdoor moving forward with a letter of consent after a meeting or during a meeting after that topic was over and you guys came back out after going behind doors. It's no longer about saving this city money. It's completely been proven.
Mr. Mayor, just for clarity, dispatch is not moving. That is, I don't know where that comes from. That is not accurate.
I appreciate the comments, but I assure the public that I haven't lied about any part of this. Just continues the rhetoric to follow an emotional narrative. And, but I appreciate your comments, sir. Looking for a motion to adopt the consent calendar, pulling item number 3. You want to pull 8? Pulling item number 3 and number 8.
I move that we approve the consent calendar, exempt items 3 and 8.
I second.
Mr. Legrone, you pulled item number 3.
Motion
Do you wish to
carries.
Yes, sir. Item number 3 has just been pulled and will be continued to a later date. We have more work to do on that item.
Councilmember Hatley, you pulled item number 8. Do you wish to comment?
Yes, thank you. I pulled number 8 because I want to vote on it separately. I'm not in agreement with accepting this letter and the content of it. This isn't about, I realize where the firefighters are coming from. I do. However, for me to vote yes on this would be to say that I am for this transition, and I'm not. Never have been. And this isn't about what the fire department wants. It's about what the public wants. And that's who I'm here to represent, is the public. And all the comments that I've received from many people that I talk to, and they want to keep their fire department. So I just wanted it pulled so I can vote no on this portion of it. And that's the reason. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other comments on item number 8? Well, I would, the studies will be coming out and all of you can see what the true numbers are, what the facts are. Because actually what petitions and that, some of them said that we're going to lose our fire department. They're going to shut it down. Would you sign this? These are the kinds of stories that are going around town. So we'll see when the study comes out that was ordered by some of these council members and see where we're at. But if you think that I have a dog in this fight, you're wrong. Trying to look out for the best for the city and the firefighters. So any of you think that you can do a better job with that, I would suggest you step up in the next election. Because you'll find out that it's not all taking pictures and shaking hands. Mr. O'Reilly, keep order, please. You had your 2 minutes. Yeah. All right, looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 8950.
The motion carries with 4 yeses and 3 nos.
Moving on to public hearings. Item number 10, appropriation limit, 2021, 2022.
Mr. Mayor, we're going to have to hold off on that. It's not 5:15 yet. That's a time-specific item. So I'd like to, if we could, move to regular business and take care of that item.
Moving on to regular business, item number 14, airport tenant agreement with Aviation at the Oroville Municipal Airport to provide fixed base operator services.
Mr. Mayor, we have Mr. Rick Farley, our airport manager, here to brief you on this item.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. About 2 months ago, we did an RFP for a new operator for the fixed-based operations at the airport. The current operator has been there almost 15 years and is retiring. And I was a little concerned that we might not find someone there to fill that position because there aren't a lot of young people coming up as airplane mechanics. But we're very fortunate. We only had one response, but we got an excellent response. Mr. Paul Amaral was already working for an aerial applicator near here and put together a nice business plan and is willing to take over the FBO operation. We're looking at initially a 5-year contract. Probably the biggest change in his contract from the one that we've had with Table Mountain Aviation is that the city will be buying the fuel truck from Table Mountain Aviation and own the fuel truck rather than having the FBO do it. One, it's a fairly large expense for the FBO, but two, the fuel in the truck belongs to the city, but the truck doesn't. And it's been an awkward situation with the fuel supplier who does the inspections with the county and others that the truck really wasn't our responsibility because we didn't own it. It was challenging for me to make sure that it was always in compliance for safety. And this way, Mr. Emmel can afford to have a second employee also so we can sell more fuel. It's been challenging in the past to adequately service the aircraft that come in when there's only one person in the FBO on many days. He either couldn't do it or those were his days off. So it's going to make a much better situation. Mr. Amaral's here, and if you'd like to hear him speak, but there's a lot of very positive buzz about what's going on at the Oroville Airport now. Mr. Hagler, who currently operates it, did get burned out in the Paradise Fire, and that has increased his desire to retire. He has gotten his house rebuilt, but he will maintain an airplane at Paradise Airport. But Mr. Almeral will be taking over, and he's got a good A&P working for him. And rather than waiting till November 1st, we're anticipating this happening July 1.
Thank you.
Any questions? Happy to answer.
Do I have any comments from the public on this item? Then we'll move to questions from the council.
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any public comments on this item.
Councilmember Goodson has a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I do. Could you explain, you're requesting that we enter an agreement with Paul Amaral for a 5-year period. Could you clarify what the 3 5-year renewal options are?
That's so that at the end of each 5 years, we have a chance to, he has a chance and we have a chance to look at the contract and amend it. We could do it at other times, but also we could go out for RFP a request for proposals if we needed to, shouldn't need to, but they just, rather than doing one 20-year contract and not being stuck with it, but it's more difficult than having renewals. So we can look at it every 5 years and make sure it's.
So do you foresee any major discrepancies in the basic template every
No,
5 years?
No.
No? Okay.
No, we
Councilmember
don't.
Goodson, if I could interject also, Rick, excuse me, let me just add in also.
Certainly.
The FAA has really started to reinforce the mandate that airports, to the extent possible, that they be self-funding and self-sustaining as much as they can. One of the issues that the FAA continues to have problems with are if you have a 20-year agreement If you have large-scale inflation or large-scale deflation, suddenly the rent gets out of whack pretty quickly. And so the reason why they like it broken up in these option periods is so that you can readjust the rent every 5 years to get to fair market value, whatever that is for airports in the local jurisdiction. That's really one of the major reasons why you break it up into pieces, because it gives a chance to reset and get whatever the fair market value is at that time. There's automatic increases year over year. I've seen some, the FAA, for example, does not and will not allow, except under really exigent circumstances, 55-year leases anymore. But I've seen some 55-year leases with a simple, escalation clause that over 30 years now, we're now 30 years into it. Fortunately, is one that was drafted when I was in probably elementary school. But now when you look at it, the rent is way out from what fair market value is. So that really has drawn the attention of the FAA, and that's the purpose for breaking it up into shorter components.
Thank you for that explanation. So what I hear you saying is it's a good safety precautionary standard operating procedure.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes, the FAA also makes us do that for engineering and planning services. They want to make sure we're always getting the best possible services for the price on those contracts also.
Thank you, Mr. Farley.
Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you. Rick, I appreciate the presentation. It looks great to see that we got somebody to take over the issue out there. I appreciate that. Many years ago, Councilman Wilcox and I met with an ad hoc committee to work with the airport, and that resulted in the upgrades and the remodeling of the FBO building to get away from the 1950s era and to have decent furniture in there. So I appreciate that. Also, I do remember the one issue about having a fuel truck there created the situation where it was an enticement to the larger aircraft to arrive. Most of the larger aircraft, the pilots don't fuel their own plane. So having a fuel truck there will invite the larger Jet A services. And so I appreciate that. And I think it's a wonderful idea that we do, in fact, purchase the fuel truck, because it was done on a kind of a private partnership deal with the city. So I think it's only right that we clear that up and make sure that it's part of the facility. Great idea, and I totally support it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And Mr. Amaral's already he's been working this already for about a month in the transition.
Right.
And a lot of those corporate pilots are very encouraged to hear that we're going to have true full service Jet A.
Right.
And on our behalf, we're one of the few small airports that does that.
Right.
So it's a feather in our cap, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of those corporate and other larger aircraft coming in.
It was a big support issue from the pilots group out there. They wanted to see that happen, so it's good to see that we're moving down the path correctly.
Yes, and you're right. Most of them are dressed pretty nicely, and they don't like dealing with self-service fuel.
Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Oh.
Paul, could you stand, please? This is Mr. Paul Amaral. He lives in Chico, but he most recently worked for AVAG in Richville. In addition to being a small engine mechanic, he can also service those turbine engines on the large turbine engine aircraft. So that's going to be a real plus for us at the FBO also. But anyway, I'm really glad to have Paul on board.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. So how does that? Well, and I'll explain this. I just want to make sure everybody knows that Paul's an Army veteran, too. Well, the way it's been working, the fuel the FBO would get fuel out of our bulk tank, put it in the truck, drive it over and park it by the FBO. And then when someone called or came in, he'd go service, and then he'd get their credit card, go back to the FBO, run the credit card, because that is our credit card system. So that runs, and that payment automatically goes into the city account. So we were doing pretty much everything except actually owning the truck. And so the way it works is every month they tell us how many gallons they sold, and then I take what our cost of fuel is and subtract that from what our sale price is, and it has been 45%, now it'll be 50%, which is more fair to the FBO. But that typically our margin's about $2, so the FBO will be getting approximately $1 per gallon.
Yeah, I'm not looking for, that kind of, really, it's just more like the customer service piece. So like this morning when this, private jet rolled in, very loud. It was as loud as a 747, amazing. But anyway, so would Mr. Amaral then respond to,
Yes, he or his employee go out there, they'll have a vehicle. In fact, I can let
Yeah,
Paul
because there was some
explain it.
concern about that with the previous mechanic that was out there as far as the consistency of that. So I was just kind of curious, like what kind of business plan, marketing plan you have to ensure that those pilots are happy when they land at Oroville, more happy to land here than any other airport in North State. That's what I'd like to see.
Well, first, we're going to have a website, so they'll be able to actually go on there and see a website for Oroville Airport and see it on there. So they'll know what they're getting when they come in. And usually what I'll train somebody new up. Right now, the person that I have with me, he's an engineering student, so he's going to help part-time while he's in school. And that big part of that customer service piece is he's going to be listening for that jet to come in on the radio. And when they come in, it's just a matter of going out and saying hello. And you go out, you greet them, see if they need anything. And they might not need anything for the first 5 times they come here, but usually you'll find on the 6th or 7th time they'll need fuel. And that will continue to come back.
And you said exactly what I was looking for, somebody to meet him and greet him.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank
So,
you.
No problem.
Another amenity that I felt we've needed to do is a vending machine. There's nothing in the FBO. We've got a beautiful FBO. I really appreciate that remodel being done, and John Nevers had a lot to do with that. And we get a lot of compliments on that FBO. Most people can't believe that a small airport like this has such a nice FBO, but we're also going to put in a dry and refrigerated small vending machine so that the pilots, whether they're, because some of those corporate pilots are sitting there all day waiting for their client to return to the airport. So.
Thank you. Councilmember Goodson.
Did I hear you saying, my interpretation of what you just said is that in the future, there's going to be some type of food and beverage mini market or restaurant?
No, just a vending machine. Yeah. But that's always a possibility down the road. The thing we don't want to do is compete too much with the golf course and their restaurant. The the airport fund receives 3% of their gross, and if we take their restaurant business away, they're going to provide a golf cart or two so that pilots can take the golf cart over to the golf course and eat, and make that an easier task for them. And one of the things we have that the FBO currently that's been there hasn't had a website, and Paul's built a great website. That's going to be a huge help in letting people know about it. We'll try to make other arrangements with the forebay and with the maybe even the casinos, so that we're going to have more transportation available, and for people coming to Oroville and hopefully spending money and enjoying our area.
Great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 8949.
So moved.
I second that. Good job.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Thank you very much, and don't hesitate to go out there. Paul's already purchased patio furniture, putting up sunscreen, and planning his open house along with the 4th of July events
Okay.
out there.
Did you say the website's already up for the airport?
Yes, ma'am.
Amaral, welcome.
Okay, moving on to public hearings. At this time, I'm going to open the meeting up for public hearings.
Hey, Rick.
Item number 10, 515 appropriation limit 2021, 2022. I think we passed 515.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and fellow council members. This is our annual appropriations limit calculation that we are required to do every year. We are well under our limit, so there's nothing to report on this. Just a
Do we have any
procedural.
questions from the public on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I do not have any blue speaker cards on this item.
Do we have any questions from the dais? Having none, looking for a motion to adopt resolution number 8957.
I so move.
Motion carries with 7 yeses and 0 nos.
Moving on to item number 11, 2021, 2022.
Mr. Mayor, this would also have to wait until 5:30. Each one of these are time specific, 5:15, 5:30, 5:45. So you can do a couple different things. You can either go to the back of the agenda for reports, discussions, and correspondence and cover some of those items in there, or you can take a small break if the council would like.
We'll take a small break. Five minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Calling the meeting back to order after our 5-minute recess. Moving on to item number 11, 2021-2022 preliminary budget.
Oh, there we go. Good evening. We have for you tonight the preliminary budget. We went ahead and put this on the next agenda as well, since it was under separate cover and you're just now receiving it. For the public, we will be putting this on the website in the morning and uploading all of the juicy details into OpenGov in the morning. So just because it was last minute, we're going to bring it again on the next agenda. I just want to point out that it is a balanced budget this year. We have revenues expected in the amount of $19 million, and we match the expenditures to $19 million. And in the district tax, we're expecting, for this year, we're expecting over $7 million for the district tax fund, and so almost 7.5 for next year. So it's been one of the best budgeting years for me to have revenue. I've had several years where we were in the deficit and just didn't really know how to balance the budget. That was not a problem this year. Last year, we really scaled down our revenues because we thought, oh, COVID is going to really affect them, but it really hasn't affected our city as much as other cities. So it was really nice to be able to do a full projection of full sales tax revenues and get all the projects that everybody asked me for in there. There's roofs on 3 buildings, remodels, sidewalk replacements, finish up the municipal remodeling, and just all kinds of fun stuff going on in the city. We're very, very busy, and we're trying to spend the money as prudently as possible. So we'll talk about this in detail in 2 weeks.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, just procedurally on this, what the thought is that we have changed the order in which we were doing this business. Previously, what we have been doing as we would have hypothetical conversations about what might be, what could be, and the potential of the following fiscal year. This year, what we decided to do was present a preliminary budget that you have before you now. What we'd like you to do is take the next 2 weeks to examine that, look for any changes that you may want to have. What we'll be doing in the next 2 weeks is meeting with the Measure U committee to ensure that the expenditures that are related to Measure U fall within the parameters of Measure U. And we will also be compiling a list from our parks commissions, our arts commissions, planning and things like that for projects that they would like to see included. We will be bringing those to you on the 15th. If the council does not have any substantial changes to the budget or request any substantial changes to our budget, we will ask the council at that time to adopt this as our fiscal year budget. We are not required to adopt the budget at the first meeting in July. We are required to have the budget adopted by the end of the first meeting in July. So if we complete our business in the middle of June, we will be able to meet that obligation and I believe have a better process where it's been more transparent, so there's a document that people can look at and examine.
And for those of you that can't wait until morning, I see 2 extra copies in front of Bill.
So we're just receiving this preliminary
Yeah,
budget.
it's for your review, and we'll
Yeah.
discuss it in detail in 2 weeks.
Councilmember Smith wanted to say something, though.
I'm sure, just a quick question, I'm sure we'll have more conversation about this, but I think we're all in the back of our mind kind of thinking about the impacts of inflation, certainly on the national conversation. So, and, we see revenues is up tremendously, but if you bought a sheet of plywood at Home Depot, right, the tax revenue, that's partly why that's happening. So, are we taking any consideration for buffering with inflation?
Absolutely. Yes.
And I'm sure you are. I just kind of want to get that out there.
Actually work with sales tax consultants that do a lot of guidance for us.
And I guess I just wanted to put that out there because, as folks look at the Measure U, look at how well it's doing, but, just like all of the rest of us, the city's no different than a home budget, just a whole lot bigger.
Yeah.
So we're all going to have to, make some adjustments perhaps. And so those revenues look great, but boy, they can go really fast. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ruth.
Mr. Mayor, if you could open this up for public comment if there's any input from our public.
Didn't think there was. Is there any public comment on this, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, I have not received any blue cards on this item.
Okay, having none, moving on to item number 12. I'm going to have to recuse myself on this item because I have a contract to perform masonry work on this project.
Mr. Mayor, we're going to have to, again, take a short break or take care of other business from the reports, discussions, and correspondence. This is time specific to 5:45.
All right, well, let's do council announcements and reports. Anyone have anything to say? Councilmember Smith?
Oh, I'm still on there for before, but since you asked.
Councilmember, okay, go ahead.
I'll go ahead. Yeah, just to talk a little bit about, and I'm sure this is kind of in your realm as well, Rotary Club, well, both of you actually, with the 4th of July up and coming, so we're really just excited about that. I don't know exactly where your thermometer is, but we're doing pretty well with raising funds. Because the Chamber of Commerce, we collect the funds in large part for this particular Rotary project for the 4th of July out at the airport. And I kind of wanted to bring up, we had been working with the airport, with the city. I say we, I put it on my other hat, in public access to the airport. And there's some really significant challenges with that. Some might be asking, why we didn't take this event back out to the forebay. And we explored that, but again, because of COVID and because of state restrictions, because the state wasn't opening things up, that avenue was not available. I think, at least for my point of view, I really bent some arms really hard to no avail because I think, again, FAA restrictions, there's just a lot of issues with the airport and the public and access on that night. I'm kind of a little disappointed with that personally because I know the public, to have an event with your family and kids and, really making it a special time. And we really having limited areas where folks can gather. So we'll have, I think, more information on that for maybe some safe areas for folks to gather. And Mr. Pittman may have some other input on that as well. But I just want you to know that we're working really hard. We value, the event and, all about the 4th and celebration of our nation and, all that means to each and every one of us. And so it's by no means that that's not been a consideration. Public, safe places to observe the fireworks. But we're moving forward with it. We're excited about it. And certainly, looking very much forward to, getting past all these COVID restrictions and just all those dynamics have made it a challenge. I mean, for not just that event, but a lot of the other events, traditionally with our Feather Fiesta days, of course that we're kind of postponing that event into the Salmon Festival in September. So we're hopeful that the various service agencies, Exchange Club and others that usually are heavily involved and put on these events will come alongside and partner in September. And we'll just have a great celebration of all things being open for that time of the year. So anyway, just kind of want to give you all an update on some of those items. And if you have any questions, you can certainly contact myself or Mr. Pittman. And we'll do the best. I'm easy to find right next door, but and I'll do my best to try to answer those questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you. Appreciate the time to mention a few things here. One is attached to this agenda is actually the scores budget for 21-22. It's one of the first years we have a new manager down there, and he's got a lot of good things happening at the score plant, and there's some new construction happening very soon. So you're going to see a lot of things happening down there. It's worthy of taking a look. I wanted the council to be able to share the information there. Also on Friday, we had the Oroville Dam Citizens Advisory meeting, which was a very long meeting. And if any of you are interested in the aspects of the incident with the spillway and then operation of the dam to the future, I'd highly recommend you look at that report. It's available on that particular website, or I think we'll draw a link to the city's website to be able to look at it. We had all the engineers come and tell us what happened, and both good and bad. And it's a fascinating topic for not just the Oroville area because of the flood control issue that is probably the most critical reason why that dam is there. Some of us forget about it because we love the recreation and whatnot, but the real reason that thing is there is for flood protection of this community. That's why it got built, for a lot of reasons. So how they manage that in the future is something that we all in this room have to serve as stewards of that process. I mentioned that in 1997, we had a high water event where we evacuated the entire downtown area of Oroville. Roughly 20,000 were evacuated. Had we had this commission that exists today as a matter of state law, we might have been able to avert what happened in the recent event on the spillway. So it's a good thing. It's something to pay attention to. The agencies start from the Oroville Dam and go down the river all the way to Yuba County, Sutter County. And it's good that we have a first-person conversation with what's going on with the dam and the future of it. There are some strong recommendations about what to be done. Basically, to put it really simple, there's a plumbing problem up there. Between the powerhouse and the spillway, there's no way they could release any large amount of water. And they can't release it through the powerhouse if they have one of the turbines down. There's no bypass. So, and they admitted that there's a plumbing problem. So however they figure that out, well, we're happy to follow that up. So I encourage people to be involved in that process. The other thing I want to mention too, of course, the airport and Councilman Smith properly addressed it. There will be a celebration. We have reached the minimum required for the contract for the pyrotechnician, so it's going to happen. And then I'll let Chief Tenz over there give an update of what happened at the airport today in preparation for that, and then also in some wonderful training that the firefighters had. It will happen, and we'll be looking at announcing safe areas, parking areas, and all those kind of things that comes with that. So thank you all. Appreciate it. That's all I have.
Okay, future, excuse me, future agenda items. You were not. Do you wish to speak? Councilmember Goodson?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. So I just wanted to give an update. I sit on the Butte County Behavioral Health Board, and I know that there has been talk for the past year and a half. There's been, do you want me to start over?
Yeah, that's good.
So I sit on the Butte County Behavioral Health Board. Wow, that really does resonate without the mask. Thank you. And so there's been discussion for the past couple of years in regards to Laura's Law. We've had a presentation here a little over or a year ago. And so we considered it, and we looked at the budget and how many people that it would serve. And for those who don't know what Laura's Law is, it is a court-ordered treatment for those that are suffering from a severe mental illness. And so we have to come up with solutions to how to address this growing culture that exists in Butte County and really the whole country. So what we decided to do was step away from Laura's Law. We have decided to go another way, and we are in the process of developing a alternate program, and there's a lot of moving parts to it. So I just wanted to let you know that we have decided to step away from Laura's Law. Thank you.
Councilmember Pittman?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As I sit as a council member, I bring out future agenda items. There's been a small group of us, and I'll say us, I include myself, to look at alternative ideas with this whole fire service idea. And consequently, I want to present a document here to the city administrator. It takes a little different view of what we could do and what we could satisfy, and I'd appreciate the staff review of that and the numbers, and just take a good look at that. It's an alternative idea. It basically keeps the fire department in place, but it invests in the fire service here locally, and it handles one issue with the Nelson Avenue Fire Station, I think, very nicely. So I'd just like to throw that out as a future agenda item for staff to review and come back with, and look forward to that discussion in the future. Thank you.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, just real quick, going back to the water board, and appreciate your service on that. I listened to that entire presentation, and your comments were, I think, were excellent. And which goes to how we're all going to be impacted. Essentially, the lake is at near historic lows. They, in April, as reported, got 20% of the expected snowpack. And then the snow was completely gone, I think, by mid-April, which was the first time that they've ever seen that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we're certainly headed for, or we're in a drought. And I think just as all of us, even though we haven't been mandated, we just need to kind of keep that in the back of our mind. And then also there was some concern raised about water being impounded to the Southern California to our peril. Mm-hmm. And I think that would be extremely irresponsible, if not even criminal, if that one was in fact the case. But that question was asked, I think, by James Gallagher and by Supervisor Connolly. And DWR, laid that to rest, that water was already impounded down south prior to the situation that we're now in. But in case there's a lot of rumor that runs around out there, but there was a lot of concern about that. And so anyway, we are in a difficult time. We do have a lot of responsibility to the environment, of course, to just the entire state. And just real quick on, who are I want to answer this question. Who are the state water contractors? Who is DWR? DWR is the state of California, and the top dog is the governor. Who are the water contractors? They're all the cities to our south, essentially. Bakersfield, Los Angeles. That's who we're talking about. So, Oroville is extremely important. We hold the water for the rest of the state. And so I think that our value, our importance is absolutely paramount. And we matter and we do count. I always want us to, just as a community, always remember that, our importance to the rest of the state and our value.
Yeah,
Thank you.
let me add to that, because you made a definition called the dead pool. And I would like to say what a dead pool is. That means that the water level will go down below the intake to the powerhouse. There'll still be water there, and it'll be exiting through the river valves that are at the bottom of the dam, but it will not be able to run water through the powerhouse, just for a definition of dead pool. Don't consider it's a dead lake. It just means a dead pool flowing through the powerhouse.
And Dave, that raises a huge issue for power generation in mid-August when our needs are really high. I mean, that potentially could create an electrical grid issue as we hit dead pool. So that's, to me, I was asked by Associated Press last week about that, and I said that is my number one concern with this dead pool problem coming in August.
Is there anyone else with a future agenda item? Having no one, we'll move on to administration reports. Mr. Legrone.
I have none, Mr. Mayor.
Am I looking for? Okay. Dawn? Mr. Huber, anything? Okay, well, with that,
I think the fire chief might have something to talk about.
Oh, I didn't see, I didn't recognize you without your hat on. Chief Tenant.
I knew that was coming. That's all right. Brother. Good evening, Mayor, Council. So I just wanted to happily report today that we did conduct our burn that we've been planning to burn out at the airport in preparation for the 4th of July event. Also, the beneficial training that we get out of it. We burned approximately 150 acres today, and we also got to do some cross-training with SO, CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE assisted us. We'll be assisting them with some of their burns. And we also got to get Jesse Smith, the GIS, was able to get the city drone out today. He was able to get some cool video. Hopefully we can put something together and share it and email that to you guys, but just wanted to report that. Thank you.
Is it correct that the SO used their water bucket?
Yeah, they wanted to do some training with their Bambi basket, so.
That's cool.
Yeah,
So that'd be
it was
nice to
interesting.
see in the future, yeah.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, we are going back to reopen public hearing for item number 12. Again, I'm going to have to recuse myself for this item because I have a contract to do work on this building. Mr. Vice Mayor, will you chair this?
Thank you. Moving forward with item number 12, the appeal of April 22nd decision of the Planning Commission to deny a conditional use permit for alcohol beverage sales at 1275 Feather River Boulevard.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Thompson, council members, Connor Musler, Assistant Planner. This item is an appeal of the Planning Commission's April 22nd denial of use permit UP 21-04, denying the sale of alcoholic beverages at a new market at 1275 Feather River Boulevard. The applicants, Mitch and George Dorgali, are transferring to this location their alcohol beverage control ABC Type 21 license from their store in Berry Creek, which burned down in the Bear Fire. A ABC Type 21 license authorizes the sale of beer, wine, and distilled spirits for off-premise consumption. The market is a use permitted by right, subject to a zoning clearance, but the sale of alcoholic beverages requires a use permit. At the April 22nd meeting, a motion was made and seconded to approve the item as agendized, which failed with unanimous vote of 6 noes and 1 absent. The commission thus effectively denied the use permit without a formal denial vote. This could also be considered no action by the Planning Commission. In arriving to their decision, the Planning Commission was concerned about alcoholic beverage sales at that location, the proximity to other alcohol retailers, and the transient population that frequents the area. The Planning Commission also expressed concern about the proximity to Bedrock Skate Park, roughly 300 feet away, and to a preschool, roughly 500 feet away across the street. Oroville Municipal Code 17.12.100 requires establishments that sell alcoholic beverages to submit a security plan for review and approval prior to certificate of occupancy. The applicant was informed of this requirement at the Planning Commission meeting and has since submitted a security policy and contracted with AccuAlarm Security Systems to install an alarm packet. That is attachment number 9 in your packet. Staff notes that the market is 4,945 square feet, which is a large floor area compared to typical liquor stores. Since the Planning Commission meeting, the applicants have worked hard to revise the proposed liquor and market concept to address the Planning Commission's concerns. Revisions include limiting alcohol sales to about 20% of the floor area, detailing other food items and groceries intended for sale, adding organic and healthy food options, changing the name from Oroville Liquor and Market to Gold City Market, and reducing the hours to 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. daily. Staff notes that there is not currently a market within a quarter-mile radius, roughly 5 city blocks, and the nearest grocery store market is the Asian Market at 1700 Feather River Boulevard, roughly 1,600 feet away. Should the appeal be approved, the City Council must make the 9 findings as required by OMC 17.16.160. Those findings are detailed in your staff report. Staff would like to note that finding 9 mentions the need for a letter of public convenience or necessity should ABC determine if there's an undue concentration of licenses in this census tract. As of last week, we have received notice from ABC confirming that there is an overconcentration and a letter of public convenience or necessity is required. Should the council approve the appeal, we are also asking that a letter of public convenience or necessity also be approved. Staff has no recommendation on this item. The City Council may choose to let the Planning Commission's decision stand or to approve the appeal and condition the project. Planning Commissioner Natalie Sheard is also here to represent the Planning Commission and answer any questions and make a presentation.
Thank you. Before hearing from Natalie, do you have any public comment on this item?
Mr. Vice Mayor, we have 5 speakers on this item. Our first speaker is Kelly Albright.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Mayor, City Council. I'm Kelly Albrecht. I'm going to speak on behalf of the applicant, Mitch Orgali. Asking a lawyer to keep his comments to 2 minutes is virtually impossible and unknown, but I'll give it a whirl. So the points I want to make are that, first of all, that the applicant has the energy and the experience and the capital to make Gold City Market a reality. Mitch and his partner, George, owned and operated the Village Market and liquor store in Berry Creek for many years until it was lost to the North Complex fire. Mitch also owned and operated Jerry's Market in close proximity to Oroville High School, as you know, for 25 years without any adverse contacts with ABC. They know how to profitably run a store. They have been and will be good neighbors and community members. They know how to run a store that sells alcoholic beverages. The proposed market is in a near perfect location in an underserved part of our city. There is no store of this kind serving the lower end of Montgomery Street, despite numerous single and multifamily dwellings in the area and despite several motels in the area. It is situated near the entrance to Bedrock Park and will serve the proposed Veterans Village project. The store, as Connor said, the store will now emphasize food sales as its primary purpose, including fresh fruits, vegetables, and organics. It is a much-needed addition to the local community. The store is already an attractive upgrade to the Montgomery Street entrance to the city of Oroville. Landscaping, lighting, signage, and security have all been addressed. You know, of course, that the applicant could put a market into this location without any use permit at all. It's a matter of right in the zoning that is there. However, I must tell you that the sale of alcoholic beverages is vital. Without a use permit, there will be no
Jimmy,
market.
I'm sorry, sir, you have your time.
Pardon me?
Time expired.
It's
Sir,
a
let me
benefit-
ask
it's
a quick.
benefit to the community.
Could I, hang on, counsel, let me have you stop for a minute. This was, who filed the appeal?
The applicant.
The
The applicant filed the appeal.
Yes.
The applicant is entitled up to 10 minutes, I believe. Give me just a moment. Hang on one second. I need to look up our rules real quick, and I apologize that this
No
did not
problem.
occur.
We had a judge in this county when I first started practicing law that set a metronome up on the bench to time our presentations.
Why don't we do this while I'm looking at the city code? Let me have you pause, at least for a moment. Let's get to some of the other comments, and then I will, and do me a favor, if the applicant is one of those comments, let's hold that, because that would be part of the 10 minutes. Let's
Yes.
have other comments, and then I'll get Brett back to you.
That'd be fine. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Star Gentles.
Good evening. My name is Star Gentles. I'm the owner of a Bright Star Preschool and Daycare. I am here because I am right across the street from the potential market going in, which is it's a great thing that we have new businesses coming into town. It's great that we are supporting these. The only thing that I'm really having the issue is the hard alcohol sales. Yes, we're on a corner where we have other convenience stores, which are nothing like the market, but they also sell beer and alcohol, okay? We don't have beer and wine. We don't have hard alcohol, and we have enough of the homeless situation in that area and the negative foot traffic that we're just actually asking for more homeless and more negative foot traffic in that area, which we see a lot of already. We're trying to bring in this new golden this area of, we want this golden opportunity to have this opening to Oroville. And when the first thing you drive into is you see a preschool, well, Cornucopia has beer and wine also. So beer and wine, convenience stores, beer and wine. We got a market and they're selling hard alcohol. So here's our opening to Oroville. I just want to look at that in a way. I mean, don't we want to see a lot more positive things when we're entering our town? We want to see things that are great, not just we're about the alcohol and the sales and the homeless, and we want so much more out of our community. And I really see a lot more coming out of this community. So I did want to express that I feel this is a great thing to have a new market in this area because we do need it. But I just don't feel that we need this hard alcohol sales. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Kathy Sheldon.
I'm Kathy Sheldon. I've lived in Berry Creek for 35 years. My husband's been there for 62. I owned a store also up in Berry Creek for about 5 years, and I ran the other store, previous owners that George had, for 10. We have schools up there. We have lots of other things up there. And I'm going to tell you, he's the most responsible owner we've had all the years that we've lived up there. And so he takes his soul and puts it out into the community as far as helping people, and I just would like you guys to consider that his responsibility. Thank you.
Gary Singh.
Gary Singh, and I'm from the Bolero gas station on the corner, right across street from this location. I sent a letter to each of city council members. I hope you guys received that. Mostly the things I explained there, what kind of problem we're facing there. Because there's a lot of drunk people on that area. I'm facing every day a lot of homeless people. If he opened that liquor store over there, hard liquor, we're going to have a lots of problem over there. And more call to the police, more call to the ambulance. And there's a river there, the kids go there. And park, kids come from other schools to play the games there. And we don't need other liquor store over there. We got 4 locations right there for beer, wine, and Arco MPM already got liquor. And there's the other market, Colon and Denny, 0.7 mile. They got liquor and they got big market, like he said he going to make a big market. They got most of the stuff like market there. Another thing, I want to ask one question to the applicant, why he want to open the liquor store and hard beer, liquor, wine on that location? Because that's the bad location. Like ladies before, she said he's owned the store in Berry Creek, but every location is different. This is the main entrance to Oroville, and we already facing problem. I'm dealing every day with those people myself, and we call the police most of the time if there's big problems. And what's the benefit of this liquor store to the community? None. Just the problems. And the license he got from ABC department, he got other options. Why he want to open here where we facing already lots of problems from drunk people and homeless? Because options he got, one option he can choose other location in Oroville, anywhere if he can find. If he cannot find it, the license he got from ABC department, he can use anywhere in whole Butte County, that license. And Butte County got 20.
Sorry, sir, your time's up. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Karen Dorgali.
So, Mr. Vice Mayor, if I might, it is not specifically written out in the code. In my recollection, the last appeal that we had from a planning commission was 2011 or 12 for the Super Walmart. And while it is not in the application and is not specifically written in the code, in that instance, we did give the applicant, the appealing individual, 10 minutes to present their case. Now, that would include the project owner, any supporters of the owner, any family members, what have you. So I was looking for something in the code. It is not in our code, but I believe we should be consistent with that and give an appellant from the Planning Commission 10 minutes total.
So that would be including.
So they've used 2 minutes from council, and I would invite council up again if he's got more to say. Be my guest. They've got a total of 10 minutes.
So and then the daughter would like to speak, I'm sure. So that all is included
They
in the
can
10
divide
minutes?
their time however they wish. But my concern is if you don't do that, you're being inconsistent with what the last appeal was. And
I agree.
That's fine with me, so we can start it over at 8, and then from there, you have a lawyer, you have family that need to speak, so it just all comes in within that.
So Kelly, if you'd like to come up.
Maybe just so for clarification, everybody who's part of this can be there with him, or?
Well, again, they have 10 minutes.
Okay.
The appellant has 10 minutes. Whoever the appellant would like to give his time to. Again, you've got counsel who's here, you've got a family member, you've got the appellant himself, I believe. So they're welcome to split their time how they wish, but they've got 8 minutes left.
Thank you, Council. So the point I wanted to make was that the economic realities of this thing is that virtually every grocery store in Oroville has a liquor license and sells liquor. Rayleigh's, Collins and Denny, Food for Less, everybody. Every gas station in town has a beer and wine license. Half the pharmacies in town sell liquor. They all do so with a use permit issued by the city of Oroville. So you have to ask yourself, what's so different about this location? That's the point I wanted to make. The point is the Planning Commission was specifically concerned about the transient population. That's in the staff report, page 1 discussion. I find it noteworthy in that regard that your staff had no recommendation to the Planning Commission, and in fact, makes no recommendation to the City Council. What's special about this location as having a store which will benefit the local community? And it seems to me that an active business in this location with video security, lighting, employee supervision, et cetera, is a benefit to the neighborhood rather than a burden. Now, I'm going to stop talking because I'm going to run out of time, but I can tell you that the homeless can already buy beer and wine on that corner at 3 locations, and hard liquor is a short walk down to the corner of Feather River Boulevard and Oro Dam Boulevard. And so, does anyone really think that the existence of this market in this location is going to make the homeless problem any worse? I think what we're doing is basically balancing our inability to deal with the homeless problem on the backs of this applicant. You know, it's not his problem, it's our problem to solve it, and he will help it rather than hurt it. And thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
I will take my mask off. Hello, I know some of you. I talked to Chrissy and Scott and Jana. I worked for the Chico ER and the Oroville MR briefly, so it's nice to see all of you. I've never met you in person before. It's nice to meet you, Janet.
You as well.
I am Mitch's daughter, and I just want to speak a little bit about his character. I think a lot of other people here are able to speak about other issues, but I can just make things a little bit more personal because I was raised by him. My dad immigrated here for the sole purpose of building a better life for his family. He's been in Butte County for about 30 years, right? And none of us expected the store in Berry Creek to burn down. That was his retirement plan. And we especially didn't expect another disaster like this after the campfire, but life happens. It goes on, and we need to figure out what to do next. And I just thought it would be nice to share some notes that people gave me immediately after Village Market burned down, because I grew up mostly in Chico. I didn't get to go up to Village Market as often as I wish I could have, but I was extremely blown away by the response I got from dozens and dozens of strangers who wanted to share with me the part that my dad played in their lives. And so I just took screenshots of a few random messages, so I hope it's okay that I read them here. The first one is from someone named Jonah. He said that he grew up in Berry Creek, and he said that the store was a foundational business that kept the area alive, and he wanted to thank my family for their many years of service in that area. And then the next one I would like to read from, she is named Serenity. She went to Oroville High School, and she had a lot to say, so I'll try to keep it brief. But she said, "Your dad has known me since I was a baby. I just wanted to reach out to you and ask if there was anything my family could do to help yours. It's our turn to return the kindness. I used to go into Jerry's Market as a teenager when I was in high school, and your dad would give me a hug and ask me how my mom was doing, and sometimes not charge me for my lunch. If he saw me smoking a cigarette, he would tell me to put it out and that it's not good for me. That man is one of the sweetest, kindest people. My grandparents also lost their home in Berry Creek. They have been there 20 plus years. This was a horrible tragedy, and if there's any way we can give back to your family, it would be an honor." And someone named Julia, this one is a little simpler. She said, I always had good memories as a child walking up there to get ice cream. I'm so sorry for your family. This is devastating to our community. So those are the three that I chose to read. And I completely understand where everyone is coming from. You're talking about preschool and you're talking about alcohol, but my dad has owned around 4 different businesses, I think, in Butte County at various times. The most prominent ones being Jerry's Market and Village Market. And they have never once been problematic in any way. Jerry's Market is right down the street from a high school, and if anything, it's been spectacular for the high school students because they get to come down there and they get to buy their candy or energy drinks, Gatorade, whatever high school students buy. And he sells, hard alcohol there, and that's never been an issue. And, I have somewhat of a stake in this. I started grad school at USC. I just finished my first semester. My tuition is ridiculously expensive. My dad thought he was, retired. He thought he had done everything that he could to build the life for his family that he wanted. And now this happened, right? Just literally 3-4 months before I started grad school. And so I just hope you all know that his heart is in the right place. And with him wanting to move forward with this business, it's for his family, it's for our futures, it's for the community as well. I don't know if, what he had in mind when he first entered this business was, to create, a community gathering spot, but that's what ended up happening in Berry Creek. And once he saw that happen, he thought, okay, I'm going to continue running my business the way that it is. It's not just for profit, it's also for the sake of investing in the community that has been so good to him for the 30 or so years that he's been living in Butte County. And I'm extremely proud of him. I mean, he is a, prime example of the American dream. Sorry. And I had some more things, but I think I need to stop. Thanks.
Are there any more that wish to speak along with the?
The applicant's choice. If there was a minute.
Oops. Yeah, there was about 1.5 minutes left.
About 1:30 left. So if the applicant has anyone else to speak for another 1:30, you're welcome to it.
Recently displaced by the bear fire. I don't know if anybody's drove by the building that George is redoing. They're making it very nice, upbeat, modern. It looks like something that should represent Oroville. I understand the concerns with the alcohol, but if you're going to stop him from selling alcohol based on that, or his business based on that, you're going to severely retard any other business that wants to move into that area, as far as the grocery stores or any other stores. Also, this little store that we're going to bat for is going to be an integral part of getting our store back in Berry Creek, which we direly need. Thank you. Have a good evening.
I do have 42 more seconds, and I thought of one more thing. This is a really cool opportunity for the city of Oroville to allow someone to build a local business. As far as I know, this building has been vacant for several years. No one has done anything with it, and now someone is finally stepping up to do something with it. And watching my dad over the last few weeks, he has been bending over backwards to try to comply with all the city requirements. And so, to me, this is a cool opportunity for you all as well, and I hope you can see it that way too. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any more blue cards?
Mr. Chairperson, the only other one I have is our Planning Commission presentation.
Go ahead.
That's my call? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Speak. The new updated application removed the word liquor, which is definitely a step in the right direction, and reduced the hours so they won't be open till 2 a.m. but till 11. But most importantly, the reduction in alcohol inventory. That is strategically what makes the difference between a grocery store and a liquor store. Grocery stores carry 2 to 5% of their alcohol, of their inventory in alcohol. Liquor stores carry all the way up. This is 20%, so that is 4 times the amount of a normal grocery store. I think this distinction between a grocery store and a liquor store is extremely important because of the way both of those institutions affect the neighborhood. Studies have shown that grocery stores are very positive and good for a neighborhood, even grocery stores with a Class 21 license. And liquor stores increase the crime and abuse, and I'm sure you all are aware of that. What I don't want, and what the Planning Commission doesn't want, is something that looks like a neighborhood grocery store on paper and on the application, but in reality will be another liquor store strategically placed in an area where many people struggle on the corner there. And we have a very large sober living environment, houses, I think probably 15 in that census tract 28, in that area already. For every one adult, there's 328 places they can buy alcohol. Wait, it's the other way. There's one place to buy alcohol for every 328 adults. Sorry about that. It's not that bad.
What's the time?
So sticking with this definition of a grocery store and a liquor store, there's some real tangible ways that we can do that. Grocery stores are extremely positive, especially a local neighborhood market grocery store is wonderful. The first would be in the signage. Most liquor stores have the word liquor. Huge, big letters, liquor. The applicant's other store in Oroville, Jerry's Market, is officially called Jerry's Market, but the sign says Jerry's Market and liquor. So will that be what will be for this, Gold City Market and liquor? Also, liquor stores have their windows filled with advertisements for alcohol. I've looked at all of them in town, and they're all pretty much consistent, and they are filled with different types of alcohol advertisements. This has been shown statistically in many studies to have a direct correlation to youth drinking at an earlier age and having alcohol-related problems. Studies have also shown, which I think you already know, that neighborhoods that have higher concentration of liquor stores have more alcohol-related accidents, drunk driving, pedestrian injuries, childhood accidents, assault, and child abuse injuries. Grocery stores, even with a Class 21 license, do not increase the crime in the areas they serve. And it all has to do with the percentage of alcohol that is in the inventory. The city of Fresno has a Responsible Neighborhood Market Act that they just passed, and they define it as a grocery store is something where the alcohol is incidental or appurtenant. It's not the main thing. It's more of a complete grocery store. It's also important to note that the ABC can deny a liquor license for any establishment that is within 600 feet of a school, a public playground, or a nonprofit youth facility. We meet this criteria on all of those counts. So in conclusion, I just want to ask you that as a grocery store has a positive effect, I would ask that you only approve this permit if it is clearly a grocery store and clearly not a liquor store. And this would be measurable by a reduction in the inventory alcohol or a change of a license to the Class 20 license, no signs on the building that say liquor, and no advertisements. I also, in conclusion, ask you to consider that there is a full-service grocery store planned for the Gateway project that will want a liquor license as well. Would this development be a better and safer choice for an additional Class 21 license at this corner than the applicants? Thank you for considering this and the impact it will have on Oroville.
Can you stay there? I'm sure there's some
I can.
questions for you. So I'll start off, and then I know there's other council members who have some questions and comments.
Okay.
What I heard you say, I was looking very specifically for what changes or compromises for, because there's a reason why we have planning commission.
Mm-hmm.
All these studies and whatnot, they do matter in regards to placement and all of that. So what I heard you say was specifically what you're looking for in a change of the application is a reduction in the square footage of the store of liquor sales. Is that correct?
Right, the floor space dedicated to alcohol inventory to reflect a grocery store level,
So
which
right
is
now
2 to
they're-
5%.
So you're looking, instead of them having 20%,
Yes,
to have a maximum of
5.
And Mr.
And
Vice
also-
Mayor, just for clarity, when we're talking about 20% of the store, it's an approximately 5,000 square foot store, so we're talking about 1,000 square feet of alcohol.
Right. Also, you is one of those items a reduction of the class 21 to class 20? Or is that not in the things you're looking to have compromised?
It was something that was recommended to the applicant by 2 planning commissioners.
But it's not necessarily,
No, to me, it's the percentage of alcohol.
is that consensus with the whole planning commission, or?
2 of them really felt that if he had a class 20 and no hard alcohol, and I've heard other residents say that they would be more amenable. To me, it comes into the overall percentage. It's like you go to Nelson's Shoes, you buy shoes, you might pick up a keychain and some socks, but it's just the point of why you go shopping. It's based on how much inventory, what items are in inventory.
Sure. So would you say from the planning commission that as a census, that if it was a class 20 instead of a 21, that
Yes.
the commission would probably be more in favorable of this, regardless of the reduction of floor space?
I guess you'd have to ask them.
Okay.
So I can't speak for that exactly.
So the other item is signage.
Yes.
You're wanting to see concrete that it won't say Gold
Liquor.
City and liquor, that it
And
just
liquor.
says.
Right, also given the historic district entrance to downtown, to just have the words liquor and all of the liquor advertising, which I have to say, the preschool is 210 feet, like door to door. So it's very close, it's right across the street, and I know in some cities, they don't allow any alcohol advertising if a liquor store or a grocery store happens to be across the street. Grocery stores have no liquor advertising on their windows in Oroville.
And then last that I heard was in regarding no posters or window signage.
Right.
So are those the main ones that you're?
Yes,
Okay.
that it is truly a neighborhood grocery store.
Okay. And you can stay there. I think we have a couple of comments or questions from the dais. Council Member Goodson?
So I had a conversation with Commissioner Natalie approximately a couple of weeks ago, and I posed to her the question. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when Mr. Mendez comes before the Planning Commission and requests the same to open up a store with a liquor license. So correct me if I'm wrong, because I said that was going to be a challenge. Did I just hear you weigh in and say that that would be a more acceptable venue?
Yes.
And so here's a question. Is there a hint of favoritism in what you had just said?
Studies show.
Because for me, if you do for one, you need to do for the other. There can be no imbalance there because you're sending a message of bias. So I just wanted to bring that forth. You're going to be faced with Mr. Mendez coming before you. And I'm just going to be very curious to the commission's response.
I guess I say if it's a grocery store and there's 2 to 5% of the inventory is dedicated to alcohol, perhaps both establishments are okay.
And so here's another thing that Mr. Mendez is going to be looking for. It's my understanding with the Gateway project, there's going to be, my personal preference is condominiums, but he is suggesting apartments. So that means quite a number of apartment dwellers. In addition to that, it's going to house a hotel. And so with that being said, those are 2 main populations, clientele, that are going to be, they're going to want the service and the accommodation. Somebody is going to afford them that grocery store / beer, wine, liquor, because that's a part of a gateway project. So just keep that in mind. And not to mention with the 5 to 6 restaurants that are in the project, I would venture to say that there's going to be a beverage service in each of the restaurants as well.
Yeah, on-premise liquor sales have a completely different effect on a neighborhood as opposed to off-premise.
Until you're in the vehicle.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
But there's a bartender who's hopefully watching you.
Yeah.
Councilman
You're
Pittman?
watching.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor. So, this is a tough one because but I want to applaud the Parks Commission for doing their work and due diligence. When you look at the resolutions that have been produced here, are the work that the Park Commission asked the applicant to do, do you see that work in the resolutions here?
Which resolutions are you referring to?
Well, there 8955 is the one that says that the council would, and maybe that's a better question to our staff planner. 8955 would be the decision of planning commission to, well, let me have staff tell me about that. That's probably a better answer.
Oh, you mean the ways that the council could, what your options are?
Well, essentially, yeah, the options that you as a planning commission presented to the applicant, are those options all contained within this resolution?
That they would be open to a class 20 and a reduction in alcohol? I do not think that is in here.
It is not.
No.
Let's have planner ask that.
So the resolution to approve, if city council were, this does somewhat address some of the planning commission's concerns. The window area for signage is limited by city code to no more than 25%. So that was something that we had added in there. That was also from the planning commission. Furthermore, project-specific conditions with that, signage will be taken care of when, a sign permit is pulled, but that's not something that we have in here at this time. So if that is something that, the city council would like to add to meet any concerns that planning commission does have, that is possible to do as well.
The other question I had is the percentage of sales area of liquor in the store. Is that in this resolution?
This is not within this resolution. That is also something that could be added as well, limiting it to no more than 20 or, as Natalie had mentioned, 5%.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Smith?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. First of all, I think as a council, and the attorney can correct me on this, I think we don't need 20 or 21. We can certainly, as an ordinance, limit to beer and wine and not allow the 21 or the spirits. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, you can. It would be, however, what I would say is, when you are getting away from the categories that the state has established in these liquor licenses, it gets very difficult to word you would have to do it by ordinance, or it can be done by use permit, but it gets very difficult to do that. It's far easier and I would say much more secure from a litigation standpoint to keep it with the categories that have been set by ABC. The other thing, and I need to interject for just a moment, in this differentiation between category 20 and 21, Planning Commission, there were two members that said they would prefer a 20 versus a 21, but you cannot impute that to the whole Planning Commission because that wasn't a vote the Planning Commission took.
Right.
They had the opportunity to take that, they didn't take it, so you cannot impute that desire to the Planning Commission. So I need to outline that just for you. You can't do that.
And the other piece is then with the ABC, so there's been a determination that we received before, or they came after the packet, or our full packet was put together and sent. And that is that ABC is talking about oversaturation. So there is even if we were to approve this tonight, if I'm hearing you correctly, they still could, because of these other triggers, the close proximity to the park, the preschool, and other mitigating circumstances, they could end up denying it. Did I hear that correctly?
So I'll speak to that really quickly. when ABC determines that there's an overconcentration, it's up to the city, either planning commissioner, in this case now city council, to ratify that public convenience or necessity letter. Once that is given, the applicant will, send out the mailers to all residences and property owners within 500 feet. That is supposed to satisfy ABC's requirements that the city recognizes that there is an overconcentration. However, we also recognize that there is a public convenience or need to have alcohol sales at this location. So they take that as the approval to say, yes, city's okay with it.
So they essentially allow us to kind of override or weigh into that. So that would then answer any concerns, future concerns with Mendez potentially building out something in the future with an additional market or whatever that's going to look like, who knows. Which I would join in with the concern when it comes to picking winners and losers. That's always difficult. So when we say, yes to one, no to another, that's for me problematic. That I think we have to have consistency, across the board and give all individuals the opportunity to succeed. And so therein lies my dilemma, because I agree that we have very close proximity to parks, the preschool, the gateway itself, just the identity as a community, and so that's a very concerning. And so I really, Natalie, appreciate your presentation with the grocery store piece, and then that additional limitation down to 2 to 5%. And it keeps more in line with what typically you would expect. I think Smart and Final or Collins and Denny was mentioned. I know I've been in Smart and Final many times. I like to shop there.
I know.
But, again, it's limited, but those items are available there if people choose to purchase them. And I just have a hard time with saying, Smart and Final, you can succeed in that arena while someone else can't. At the same time, and I would agree with the attorney's summation that's representing the client, that, the homeless problem is all our problem. But, I don't necessarily know if we should, that's a bigger issue. I think the focus here is the parks, the identity, the image, and I think some of the stats that you pointed out with a grocery store and how that it's a benefit and a plus to a community or to a neighborhood versus when it's a liquor store, then some of these other issues then begin to develop with, alcohol-related problems, whatnot. So, I'm certainly inclined to look at that 2 to 5%. And that's kind of where my mind is going, and because I think you've really unpacked that well for us. And there may be additional questions here, but I'll reserve comments for later.
Councilman Hatley?
Thank you. First of all, let me just address this right off the bat. We have people here, a businessman that wants to come into our city and bring a business, and it reverts back to what was said earlier. He has 10 minutes to present his case, and staff can stand up here and talk for 2 hours if they want and tell us why we shouldn't do it, and he gets 10 minutes at the bite of the apple. That does not seem fair to me. We tell people, oh, please annex into the city with us. You want to have a voice. You see what your voice gets you? It gets you 3 minutes or 2 minutes, or it gets you 10. That's wrong. If I'm in here and this man paid almost $1,200 to stand here for 10 minutes and fight for his business, to me, that is just so wrong. It infuriates me. It does. And, and I've been on the other side of the table. When I wasn't sitting on this council and I stood up, and not this mayor, but a previous mayor said, well, you can't say that. Yes, again. And the attorney, thank God, had sense enough to say, if you want to get sued, tell him that again. Well, I got to say what I wanted to say. And that's what irritates me about this system we have here. If we're going to let people have a say and we want them in our city and say you have a voice, then give them the voice. Now, if they start being redundant, then cut it off and say, look, you're being redundant. We've heard that. Do you have something new? And move on. That's what it is when you're leading up here. So to me, it's just so wrong on that level. And here's the other thing. Whether it's 5%, okay, 5% or 20% or whatever the floor size is, all you're doing is you're either putting it out on the floor or you put it in the back room. I mean, because you're not limiting. I mean, if somebody walks in and says, I want a case of this or whatever, or however it's sold, I don't drink, to be honest with you, I don't. But however they come in to buy, they can go in the back room and get it. So the floor space, to me, doesn't mean a lot to me, because whether you have 20% of the floor is alcohol on it or 5%, the amount of alcohol in the building is what you're really looking at, and it can be in the back room, and they can just keep bringing it out. So, to me, when somebody comes into this town, and it's sort of like the old bird in the hand and two in the bush. Which do you want? We've got a promise, but we've had promises for that gateway down there for 15 years or more. And we've had more of these things come in here saying, oh, yeah, we're going to build this elaborate stuff, and it's always been a hotel, and it's going to be this and that and that. Do you see anything down there? No, you don't. Okay, we have a man that came in and spent hard-earned money and put in something, jumped through every hoop the city asked him to do, and he did it. And that's what I'm here to tell the people of this community. If you're willing to put your money and you want to be in our city, we should welcome you with open arms. Now, are we going to set some limits? Yes, we are, but because we have to. We can't just say, open the door and run all night. Well, we're not going to do that. But at least give these people the opportunity. If they become the problem, if that business becomes a problem, then I'm sure that our attorney is going to find a way to eliminate that problem if it turns into that. And so I don't foresee that any way, shape, or form. And to me, at this point here, I think it is just out and out wrong to deny this man his opportunity to go ahead and complete his business, get it open, and if there are problems down the road, we deal with them. And you're absolutely right, it's not his problem for the homeless or the people that may come around there. They're going to come around there whether that store's there or not, because there's plenty of other opportunity. If they're already there, it's not like a big magnet or a big sign or floodlights showing up saying, oh, come here because I have alcohol in my store. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's not going to happen. So, to me, let's be consistent. Let's show business people that we're serious about them conducting business in our city. That's what I want to see happen by this council. And so, with that said, that is my take on this. And we'd better adhere to it, because other business people are watching. And they're going to say, well, if you put that restriction on, or you do this, or you do that, what's next? I think it's wrong, and that's all I have to say on that subject.
Yeah, I appreciate Councilman Hatley's comments, and basic premise, I fully agree with him. My other job is next door at the chamber. I would just say this, and we love businesses and people that want to invest in our community, and I really appreciate Mitch and George. They invited us over to show us what they were doing and the vision they have for the market, and the changes that they made to the branding of the store and all that, and I really appreciate that, the landscaping and all of the additional pieces. However, I think that within community, we do set standards. We have to understand that the planning department has a responsibility to ensure that the planning meets the community standards, the overall plan of an area. And a market, a grocery store, for an example, is an allowed, approved use of that zoning, okay? So he doesn't even need to essentially ask for permission. I mean, it's just automatic approval because that's an allowed use. But when you get into alcohol sales, we as a society, that's why we have ABC, we have some of these other agencies that oversee some of these areas that can become problematic for a community. So I just want to put this in perspective. And I think, again, when the project was initially brought to planning, the name was liquor was in the name, as we had already had that presentation and some of those concerns. And a liquor store requires now a conditional use permit. So I think I'm not defending the planning department, but I think that they had the overall heart and soul of our community in mind when they pushed back on this, and perhaps had the initial project brought was a little different, or more like what we're seeing it now, there probably would have been a little bit different temperature in the room. I'm just assuming at this point. But I just want to let businesses know that when you're thinking in terms of going outside of the zoning, allowed zoning of any facility, you're going to have to apply for a conditional use permit. And it's due diligence on that individual setting up that business or wanting to build something. You need to vet that out. So, and it's important to make sure that there's a green light. You get, a lot of invested, get deep into a project, and then you find that you have a hiccup, kind of like, and I think we're going to mitigate this. I'm hopeful that it's going to be something that everyone's going to feel like, I got what I was looking for. Maybe not all of what I wanted, but I got a lot what I wanted, and everyone can kind of walk away feeling good out of this process here tonight. I'm hoping anyway. But I just want to say to businesses, we love business. We want to see that investment. But it is important as a business that, man, you check that zoning. Ensure that, there's a green light, that there's not going to be any issues, and do that due diligence and check those things out before you buy that building or make that investment. I think that's just good. I'm just kind of offering advice here, I guess, to do that. And so you're not faced with having to spend an extra $1,200, as was pointed out, which is really unfortunate, and where you're kind of in this process like we're seeing now. But anyway, I just wanted to add those comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Briggs?
Thank you. I just wanted to provide my own feedback and assessment on this particular issue. The first, through the past several months, as I've shared with this council, we've been doing a needs assessment for the downtown district. This location is within the historic district overlay, so the information is applicable in this case. One of the things that was brought time and time again, as far as what people want to see in this community, was the need for specialty and health-based grocery stores, which is something I am always hoping to see included in our development. Not just because it's a need, but also because it helps with the overall health of our community. And as Natalie described, how the grocery stores in a neighborhood actually leverage that neighborhood in a positive direction. I also believe that good, although good is good, it is also at times the enemy of great. And so when we talk about, well, we have to say yes and yes, and we can't have nuance, I absolutely disagree that there is nuance, and that is the job of this council, to understand the nuance of each different business and to look for what's best for this community. Mr. Hatley, Councilman Hatley, mentioned the change in percentage of floor plan not being much of a difference. I actually would much prefer a lower floor plan percentage of the 2 to 5% as a grocery store is, specifically because it requires then that we have more offerings in the food areas and in the alternative reasons to visit this store, which will actually drive overall sales. I'm perfectly fine with more inventory being stored in the back. There's no problem with that. However, when you go into a store and there's limited offerings, your opportunity or your desire to go back time and time again is reduced. However, that limited 250 square feet, which is still quite sizable, allows for them to have sufficient inventory and diverse inventory. Finally, I do really appreciate the hoops that the applicants went through as far as the name change, lighting, landscaping. I very much appreciate that, and I hope that through this conversation we're able to continue to narrow the gap in what the applicant was and what's best for this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Goodson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I think everyone weighed in on some very good points. And I think the bottom line is, in the common denominator, is that we want what's best for the community. So we've addressed signage, posters, a name change, reduction in the percentage of floor space. And I would have to say with Councilman Smith, not everybody wins everything, not everybody loses everything, but we all gain something. And I'm definitely in agreement with Mr. Hatley. How the outside investor perceives how we do business with one another is an indicator in their decision-making process to see Oroville as a benefit or go elsewhere. And we know what's elsewhere, right down the road. And I don't even want to say the name.
Mr. Vice Mayor, if I could, I'm sorry, Kay asked me a question earlier, Kay Castro. I'm sorry, I forgot the question. Kay, could you come up and ask me that again? I'm sorry, I just spaced it.
My question is a procedural one about what the applicant really is asking for, and I think it has been touched on with staff regarding that the ABC has, I heard staff say already ruled against it based on the proximity, and that you would be issuing the letter for overall community necessity. So I just wanted to clarify before you all voted what we're doing here. Did that do it?
That makes sense. Connor, can you answer that question for Ms. Castro?
Yes, so what we're voting on, so what we received from ABC was that, over concentration notice. The staff report, mentioned Census Tract 28. This includes everything, east of the Feather River, south of the Feather River, north of Orodam, pretty much all of Oroville where all our retail is. So every license in there, Rayleigh's, Food Max, they're all within that census tract, which, of course would lead to an overconcentration given the amount of retailers within that census tract. So when the applicant first applied, ABC was a little bit slow. They had a backlog. We finally received notice. They sent the application that it has been received. And just last week, we also received notice that, they finally determined there is an overconcentration. This letter is not saying that, the schools or anything is can't be approved. It's just saying you have a lot of alcohol licenses in Census Tract 28. Is the city okay with approving this still? And that's the go-ahead for ABC to say yes or no to issue the license to operate at this location.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, quick question. What's the difference between the permit 21 and the permit 20?
So a type 21 license is off-sale general. It's beer, wine, and distilled spirits, so all the hard liquor. Type 20 is just beer and wine.
Okay. And do either one of those have a percentage requirement or restriction within the store?
None of those do, no.
None of those do. Okay.
Councilmember Pittman, if I might actually follow up on that.
Please.
You are correct that they don't have requirements. I would note, under the city's ordinance for neighborhood food and beverage sales, neighborhood food and beverage sales in zoning code section 17.16.220 requires 30% of the sales area dedicated to perishable goods that include dairy, fresh produce, fresh meats, yada, 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 and 50% of the sales dedicated to non-perishable food products intended for home preparation. That's 80%. And so other grocery stores, Rayleigh's, what have you, there is no cap for them on 2 to 5% of alcohol sales. Now that they typically have 2 to 5%, but there is not a cap for them other than they have to have 80% perishable and non-perishable foods. The other 20% is their discretion. And so the reason why I call that out is, I just want you to be mindful. You've got a minimum of 80%, I'm trying to, in my mind, I'm putting these in boxes. Does it fit as a food store, a neighborhood food and beverage sales store? Well, it kind of does to me. Now, again, This is a policy question for the council, not for me. It's not my decision. And I'm just telling you just how I logically look at it. I just look at it and I think, well, if we're going to treat it like a neighborhood food and beverage sales, like if it were a Rayleigh's or a Super Walmart or some other new grocery store, those are their restrictions. They've got 80% minimum, 50% non-perishable, 30% perishable. And that's it.
Thank you.
Is that non-perishable food specific?
It says, this is how it reads, 50% of the sales area dedicated to non-perishable food products intended for home preparation.
Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, you kind of actually addressed my question, because because I'm thinking of that 5% number, and if we could, and how that mix would be, so in other words, I could just go, since they have a 21, they could just do 5% in all spirits or all beer. I mean, it's really up to their discretion. There's nothing, and I don't know if we even want to weigh into that as far as what that looks like, but now I'm kind of hearing something a little different. So, but we can say 5%. And we're getting out of the lane a little bit. Now, do you think that could trigger any kind of legal questions on that or challenges?
Well, let me be candid.
To be candid,
The legal questions won't be triggered by this one. The legal questions will be triggered by the next one.
Okay.
Because if you allow only 5% here, and you do another use permit where you say, go ahead, up to 20%,
Yeah.
be my guest, that's where you're gonna have an issue.
That's
the
the
challenge.
challenge.
Because
It's
now
not the
you're
first
being-
one, it's the subsequent one, that where you always have the problem.
Right.
And so, and it begs the question, are you putting something more onerous on this use permit than you have on others? And you're entitled to do that, and I don't want to somehow say you're not entitled to do that. You are entitled to do that. But what you need to do is, then in the future, you would be raising the bar, or lowering it, depending on which direction it goes in your mind. You would be changing it so that in future use permits, that becomes the new standard.
President.
And that's really what you're looking at. You have that ability as a council to say, just hypothetically, we've got plenty, we don't want more, therefore let's lower the percentage down to maximum 5%. Okay, that's fine, you can do that. Then that becomes the standard for the next applicant, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one.
Councilmember Riggs?
My question was, so essentially we would, in a loophole roundabout way, be creating new policy regarding how those percentages have to be, right? Well, we would be creating past precedents.
You
which
would be creating
essentially
precedent. Yeah, it's not a loophole, you would be creating precedent. Because in theory, and again, I'm just speaking in theory, you could have a neighborhood food and beverage store that sells 30% perishable goods, 50% non-perishable food products, and 20% non-alcohol trinkets, toys, what have you. I mean, if that's the business model, okay, they can do that.
So I have a question, just to follow up to that.
Sure.
So ABC is clearly defined that this is an oversaturation.
Yes.
That's why we're having to deal with it on the way we're dealing with the letter.
Partly, that's why you're dealing with it,
Okay.
yes.
So could we, within that, write it where we have an oversaturation, we reduce it to 5%? So if there are other areas where that's not an issue, then we can go to the 80-20 as typical.
No. The reason why
And I thought I was so smart.
No, you know what? You actually, in many instances, you could do that. The problem is in this area, you can't because what happens is you say, well, when you have an oversaturation, then if stores close, if they change their business model, what have you, then you'd have to go back and retroactively change the use permits, and there really isn't a vehicle to go back and do that.
So the response would be for new use permits, when there is already established what's the word now? Oversaturation, new use permits must abide by 5%.
Yeah, I think that gets you into some legal trouble.
Okay, fine.
I do.
Yeah.
That gets you in legal. If I'm
Thank
being
you.
candid, and I need to be in this role, that gets you into some legal trouble.
Well, I'll weigh in here as well. The fact, I'll just say this, first of all, the fact that we're having this much of a debate, I hope comes across as to this community that we want business in town, but there's a proper way of doing it. And so it's like, where do you find the balance between limiting and just free-for-all, I think is just the discussion that we're having here. I do want to say as well, before I make any of my own points, that I also met the owners and looked at their property and was very impressed with how things were clean and presentable. I've gotten countless emails from community members, mostly actually positive. I've gotten quite a few actually from people from Berry Creek, who I personally know and respect and have had nothing but good things to say. So that just shows to me just a testament of we want good business people in town. And so I hope this community, no matter what we decide here, hears the fact that we welcome these guys, welcome you so much for our community, and we're looking forward to have more responsible business owners in our town. I think the big word we're looking for here is compromise. I think that, if we go, 100% for one way, obviously we're not going to be happy. And if we go 100% for the other way, we're not going to be happy. So I really think it's important for us as a council to find some kind of a compromise. I'm totally on board with the stipulations of having zero liquor in the actual sign. I don't necessarily know how that can be done legally, because I've seen people come in and have literal cuss words in their name here in Oroville. Of course, it's not spelt cuss word, but pronounced cuss word. It's like, how did that get passed? And so I'm not sure what the city can do in regards to, because from my understanding, names and signage isn't necessarily within our scope of authority. Is that correct?
Well, you have just hit on the very reason why you don't have the sign ordinance in front of you and why I've been working on it for so long. I've been working on it actually. Without getting too pointed, there is an individual based in Southern California who goes around suing cities based on their sign code. And I've been having, I've been having discussions with him about the draft sign code as it was previously published. And the difficulty with sign ordinances, as you all can probably recognize, it is the intersection of the First Amendment and municipal organizations and zoning code and what is a prurient interest or non-prurient interest. And don't make me say that too many times because it's hard to pronounce. But it is an intersection of about 4 different areas of constitutional law, all of them with their own intricacies and points, and it is anytime you have an intersection of different constitutional principles, it is fraught with peril. So the short answer to your question is, you do have a sign code that can be restrictive. It is going to have some restrictions in it. I think looking at the applicant, they have already changed the name of the business. They would not be able to change it back without coming back and asking for a modification to the use permit. So you do exercise a more than a fair amount of control. You exercise a pretty good amount of control there. Let me mention about the alcohol advertising. To say grocery stores don't put alcohol advertising in their windows is simply untrue. I have seen wine and beer and all kinds of things. What they don't do is they don't throw it in your face. They don't really be crude about it. I will tell you just anecdotally, the state of Utah has an absolute prohibition on alcohol advertising. When I was in college, I went past a bar that said in the window in large letters, "We sell the drinks the state won't let us advertise."
That's pretty ingenious.
Advertising, right? They're not advertising alcohol. They're not, they were within the letter of the law. Having said that, I think you've got in your restrictions, in the 9 or so restrictions that staff drafted, I think you have some pretty good regulations. I think you've got some good teeth in there. You have the ability, to do what you want, to get what you're looking for, to get a business owner in town, should that be the policy you want to follow? And again, it's a policy decision for this council, squarely within your prerogative. And again, if you choose to adjust the percentage of floor space that can be used for alcohol sales, as is absolutely your prerogative, you can do that going forward. That will become the standard going forward if you make it more restrictive. Just understand that. That's okay. Just understand going forward, that's going to be the new bar. The new, not bar as in alcohol bar, but the new regulation, the new metal bar.
Sure. And so it sounds like, though, from the owners, that the sign, the reality is it's not a non-issue because he's already changed the sign. He's already changed the name. The window signage, we have an ordinance regarding how much stuff can be in the windows. Is that correct?
That is correct, and they will be required to comply with the sign ordinance, both now as it exists and as amended.
So that's solved. That's solved.
Right,
It
that's
sounds to me
solved.
like now what it basically comes down to is floor space.
Square footage.
So we have one side that's at 20, and we have another side that's 5. Can we meet in the middle? Can we meet in the middle? Meet that.
Sure.
That is a discussion. If I can be blunt and very candid, Mr. Vice Mayor, that is a discussion for this body, for you and your colleagues to chat.
Because what I'm not for is just completely circumventing our planning commission. We have them here in the city for a reason. The studies they do are here for a reason. If we were just to throw out the research, then why have a planning commission? Just let people do what they want. So I highly respect what they have to say and their recommendations to this council. So we'd be amiss to just say, thank you, Natalie, we're not going to hear anything you have to say, whatever. Because that's not my position at all. So my recommendation here for the council is that we adjust the floor space, that it not be 20, but also, that it not be 5, and that this council decide on something in the middle. Thoughts?
I like that.
I like that as well.
I have a question of Natalie, or Smith's on the queue.
Again?
Council members, are all these new, Jackie, or, okay, council member
So,
Smith?
and I'm just actually just queuing in on your comment, because anytime we touch this and reduce that percentage, that we have to be cognizant of the fact that that's the new standard. So when we think about potentially as the city grows, we're expanding our city limits, and other, big box, whatever, is looking at Oroville, then, that could potentially be
Hinder.
problematic. I don't know. That the problem here is we kind of wade into an area that, we do our research, right? But this kind of got off here in an area that I had not completely anticipated tonight, to be able to fully digest this. And, again, we're relying on our planning department. She came in with I thought Natalie did a fine job with that, and then you threw a monkey wrench in it there.
I'm sorry.
I thought we were onto something. So I just, part of this is a lack of information, I think, if we do like a 10%. I think, I completely agree with where we're going. I think conceptually, it's just that, what's that do in year 5 when we're a bigger city and, Costco wants to come here, or Lord knows what. And would that potentially be problematic? I don't have an answer to that tonight. But I certainly, it's in the back of my mind. And so that's the difficulty here that I'm having. But conceptually, I'm totally in agreement. I just don't have an answer to that. And you kind of, do you have any help there, Mr. Attorney, on that? No. Am I kind of tracking with kind of the concern?
No, look, I understand your concern, absolutely. And that's why I keep saying this is a policy decision for you to make, because you will be setting policy, whatever it is you do. Now, I will say, based on the modifications that let me compare this to the Super Walmart appeal that you received. There was no change from the Planning Commission documents that the Super Walmart had. Well, not none. There were very, very little, but most of them were made because Walmart wanted to change some things on their own. There were virtually no changes from the project that was proposed at the Planning Commission to the project that was proposed at the City Council. In this instance, you do have some changes that the applicant has made. The applicant has changed the name to remove the word liquor. There are, and again, I don't have it queued up. I had the code queued up here, but the time that the store would be open has changed. The lighting has changed. I mean, so it is a different project, strictly speaking, than the one that the Planning Commission considered.
Yeah.
So the fact that you make a decision, if it is your decision to approve this, doesn't mean that you are somehow rejecting the Planning Commission. This is a different project.
Yeah, and it is.
And it is, based on some of the concessions that have been given. And I think that, I'll be candid with you. You don't know what the Planning Commission would have done with what you have in front of you, because they might have said, we're okay with some of this stuff. And maybe they would have struggled with this discussion about percentages and who knows? If we only had a crystal ball, but we don't. And so that's why you guys get paid the big dollars to with all the responsibility.
Councilman Pittman?
Thank you, and you're correct about the Walmart appeal, and I believe it was to deal with the nighttime migratory habits of the local bird population and reflecting the street light, or the lights in the parking lot lights, as I recall.
Oh, your recollection is spot on. It was related to shading of the lights in the parking lot.
Thank
so
God.
that migratory birds would not become confused
Exactly.
and believe that it was the sun.
Yes.
I kid you not.
Oh, thank God we're not considering that
joking.
here tonight. I
I
appreciate that.
kid you not.
Natalie, you made an excellent report. Could you reference back the neighborhood grocery store percentage of floor space to alcohol? If you remember that number?
2 to 5%.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had. That's all.
Councilmember Goodson?
I don't even remember who the comment came from. So. But it was Vice Mayor Thompson had mentioned we want to be respectful of the Planning Commission and their role. And so it's not that we negate. This is how we engage in healthy conversations. We listen, we validate one another. The Planning Commission, we have listened to their staff report, and now we have to come to a decision, and for lack of a better way to say it, with all the input, with all the perspectives, we are now at the crossroads where we have to make a decision. And no, who said we got paid the big bucks? Let's switch salaries. Or should I say stipend? Yes, and so the buck does stop here. And we appreciate everyone taking the time. You've been very patient with us. But I'm going to end by saying I am in agreement with Vice Mayor Thompson that we now have to weigh in regards to what that percentage does look like. And bear in mind, we are setting precedent.
Mr. Vice Mayor, if I could I ask Mr. Huber a follow-up and clarity question? Mr. Huber, you can, but I still need the answer. The applicant's sitting here, and I think we're kind of remiss in not hearing what he has to say. I mean, this is he's been sitting here the whole time. He can probably solve this for us real quickly. If we could, discuss, Mr. Huber, is a voluntary agreement to reduce your flooring to 10% a precedent, or is it just a voluntary agreement as part of the use permit? And if so, if the applicant's agreeable to that, or a number that the council is agreeable to, does that protect us from the precedent-setting portion?
If the applicant voluntarily, as part says, look, I'll amend my application to reduce it to a X number percentage, then that is not setting a precedent because it would be coming from the applicant.
And is that binding?
It would become part of the use
The
permit.
applicant.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
Member Hatley?
Well, you asked the very question I was getting ready to ask, because it seems odd to me, we're sitting here talking about somebody's business and livelihood, and they're sitting right here, and we're talking around them, and they're just kind of there, and it's like, well, who knows better what they can live with and what they can do than them? If they say, I have to have 20%, or I can live with 10 or 15 or 17 or whatever that number is. To me, I think it's just wrong not to engage them and let them tell us. I don't know what he needs for his business, and there's not a person sitting up here who knows what he needs. Knows what he needs, and I'd like to hear what it is. If he says, I've got to have 20, then we make a decision from there. And you're absolutely right, Mr. Legrone, you hit the nail right on the head. Let's hear from the man himself rather than talking around between us.
Sir, would you like to approach the, okay, can you approach the podium, please, with this
Thank you,
microphone?
Natalie. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Mitch Dorgali.
Yes.
And I follow with Mr. Wiz and Connor. After we fell down and represent ourselves, we follow all the rules. We fill up all new application. We change the name. We fix up everything to the new code and to what they told me exactly to do. And they never mentioned you have to make it 20. It was 50%. By ourselves, drop it to 20%. I know if they said make it 5 cents from the beginning, I don't spend extra $50,000 on all this change and landscape and enclosure and everything like that. So we're talking about a small number, and we don't know how it can be in the future. I have faith in myself and in my partner, George, but we don't know what can I sell. Maybe the milk can sell number one. So you can't tell me like 5% for the milk or 5% for the grocery or 5. Maybe in the whole area there is no dog food store. Maybe the dog food blooming like that. So it's what we're talking about 5 and 10%, and we don't know what the store gonna be. I have feeling in myself, yes, I'm gonna do good. I'm gonna spend money. I'm gonna buy everything brand new cooler, brand new shelf, brand new counter, brand new cash register. But we're talking about something simple, and we don't know how it's gonna be in the future. But if they mention you can have 5% alcohol and the liquor license by itself worth $200,000, I won't do everything.
Okay.
My liquor license worth $200,000, and you try to tell me 5%, maybe 1%. I don't think that's fair at all to what I'm doing right now.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Goodson.
I have a question. We wanted to hear from you. What percentage would you be comfortable with? Because you see, we're in a very compromising situation here.
The 20%, I'm happy with. Even like all the convenience stores. Sometimes when you go to Costco in Christmas time, you see 50% of the floor is alcohol. So I'm happy with the 20%. I dropped from 50 to 20. And I think that's a big drop.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you very much.
Any more comments from this council?
Motion.
So then we're looking for, if there's no more comments from this, then we're at a place to make a motion.
Okay.
I heard 10% thrown around quite a bit. I think if there's a potential store going across the street, there must be some in consideration. But looking for a recommendation from this council.
All right. I'll give it a shot. Since we've sang, this can't be much worse than the singing, so I would motion to approve the application with the stipulation of no greater than 10% of floor space for alcohol sales.
Chrissy, let me ask about the motion. Is that adopting Resolution 8955, or is that a separate motion? I'm
I'm
just
not
looking,
seeing 8955. I'm just seeing all of the different recommendations.
Right.
I don't know where you're getting
That's in the
8955
staff
from.
report.
It's on page, if you've got 104 out of 220 in the
yeah,
packet.
104.
All right, I'll scroll that
103,
direction.
104.
Because with your motion, I just want to make sure we get the right resolution.
Right.
Yep.
Instead of, let me just look at yours.
Sure. Maybe staff could come up, would you detail 8955 just to make sure she understands her motion?
I'm jumping to it.
Okay.
So, Resolution 8955 is council approving the appeal and making findings and approving the minor use permit for the alcohol beverage sales. So that's the one where you would want to add your project-specific
stipulation.
conditions.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
And that, yes, 8955 with a stipulation of 10% floor space dedicated to alcohol sales.
Before you make a second.
I have a question.
Go for
Yes.
it, Councilman Hatley.
Okay, so as I'm looking at the stipulations that were made here, it was, we're changing the 20% for the area of the floor, and the applicant has already changed the name and the hours that the store will be open. Is that correct? Okay. And did I miss something? Didn't he just tell us that he needs 20%? Isn't that what he said?
That's what he said.
Okay, it looks like he's doing all the giving. To me, looks like he's doing all the giving, and we're not. We're not doing anything. We're just kind of saying, well, this is great because he's already changed the name. He's hours of operation. I mean, I don't know, there's just something feels wrong to me about this. And then we're gonna say now on top of that, we want you also to give up 10% of your area. I don't know, to me, there's just something wrong with that. And I'm not gonna go for that. I'm just not. He's given up his stuff. He's made compromises. And to me, I don't see where we've done anything other than say, okay, you can give all this stuff up, but now we want more. No, I don't want more from him. I think he's put together, he spent a lot of his own money, and those are my feelings on it. And you know, so be it, but that's just the way I feel about it, and I'm just not gonna go for it. Because I don't think we should get involved in telling people, you know, we can make recommendations and ask them to do things in their business. But we should not sit up here and hold their feet to the fire and say, you will do it, or I guess you'll go somewhere else. That's not the way we're supposed to do business. That's not the way government's supposed to be. I know that's the way government is, but I don't like it, and that's why I sit up here.
So before we get into discussion here, Council, or Attorney, Mr. Huber, once we have a motion on the floor, do we open it back up for debate and go back and forth on this? Or once we have a motion, we go to a second and then let the decision?
You have a motion on the floor. If the motion receives a second, then
There
you
was
can
no
open it up for
second.
debate on the motion.
Okay, so do we have a second?
There was no second.
All right, then the motion fails.
For lack of a second.
Councilmember Goodson, you're on the queue.
Oh. Oh, gosh, let's see. So what I hear Mr. Hatley saying is that the motion would be to approve at a percentage of 20% as requested by the business owner.
I'm sorry, what? I couldn't hear you.
She says that, go ahead.
It was just for clarification. It is my understanding that you
Want
are
20%.
requesting a motion to approve
20%.
with the 20% as requested by the business owner.
Right, if we use,
Is that a motion?
well, with these other concessions
Mm-hmm.
So the resolution incorporates the applicant.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the application.
mhm.
The resolution incorporates the appeal from the applicant, including the terms that the appellant has placed in there. So that means the name change, the 20%,
Mhm.
the time
Okay.
of open and close, all of those conditions are in there.
Okay. I second.
So there's a second here. Before we get to now, it's open up for discussion on the motion, correctly?
Correct.
So, Mr. Mitch, can I have you approach the mic here one more time? Because I went to your store and we had a conversation. I'm just curious as far as the percentage-wise, because my question to you in your store was in regarding the profits from the store from alcohol being like, that must be one of your big moneymakers because this is the hubbub of, this whole thing of why we're talking here is the alcohol. And your answer to me was actually there's very little profit from the alcohol, and it's the other items that are actually the big moneymakers. So with that said, with you saying that alcohol really isn't the big moneymaker, it's the other items, but yet you're also saying that you need 20% in order to compensate for the $200,000 liquor license. So so clarify that you could not, the sales of alcohol in the store with a 10% floor, covering that was talked about previously that died, that there wouldn't be enough profit from the alcohol sales in order to cover the $200,000 liquor license. Is that what you're saying?
Mr. Scott, I already have the liquor license, but our conversation was like the markup, the percentage of the profit on the alcohol is lower than grocery and meat and cereal and dog food and stuff like that. But the people go to the store that have liquor because certain store have liquor. Okay, now, if you want to go into a project like that, the lowest percentage on the cigarette, then the liquor, then the grocery. The grocery has markup and profit more than any other thing.
But people probably buy the alcohol more, and that's why there's more profit in
and
it.
when the people go to buy the alcohol, they buy the soda or the energy drink or the snack or the beef jerky or
bread,
meat and stuff like that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I have a question.
So with this, so we have people in the queue. Is that an old from Councilmember Goodson, or is that a new? in the
That's
dais?
old.
Go ahead,
That's old.
Councilmember Goodson.
No, that's old. She took me out
Oh,
of the
okay.
queue.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, I'm just looking for, where do we have that 80-20 split mentioned in the ordinance?
It's not mentioned in it's not mentioned in the resolution.
Or resolution, excuse me.
It's in the application.
Okay, because I'm not seeing it
The
in the
application,
resolution.
the application is binding on the applicant.
Okay. And then, just to be clear, that 80-20, as you were mentioning, the code as it applies to what constitutes a grocery store with those percentages. So that's customary and ordinary when it comes to that type of a business as per our ordinances.
So I need to be clear about that because I don't want to confuse. I was using that as an example. This is not in the zoning where you have neighborhood grocery stores. That is in the code for a neighborhood grocery store. This is not the zoning for that. But I'm trying to be consistent from one category to another. You've got that in your ordinance now for neighborhood grocery stores, that 80% of perishable, non-perishable food. You have that now. This isn't one of those, but I'm just saying but you can sort of treat it like that even though it's not in the right zone. If this were in a different zone, then this would be done absolutely because that's what the ordinance
Right.
says. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was
Yeah,
using
that's
it by
why-
analogy.
Yeah,
It's not
absolutely, because if it's
applicable in
zoned,
this
it's
zone.
zoned. Yeah, then just, yeah.
I'll just chime in a little bit right there too. Our code distinguishes between alcoholic beverage sales and food and beverage sales. So alcoholic beverage sales is a business that primarily sells alcohol as part of their business model. Food and beverage sales is a majority of the floor area is dedicated towards food. Alcohol is also able to be sold so long as if it is not the primary business purpose. So that's where, this would fall under, is the distinguish, between alcoholic beverage sales or food and beverage sales. How much of the floor area is set aside based on the proposal as submitted?
Was that all your comment?
Yeah.
Councilmember Pittman.
Yeah, thank you. And under the motion, I just wanted to have a quick conversation with essentially everyone in the room. Clearly, this is a concerning matter, and I think, as Councilman Goodson said, we've all weighed in on this, and I appreciate that discussion. I appreciate the owner investing in the community, and this is a tough call for us up here, but at the same time, it also gives the owner an awareness of how much we're concerned about your store and the fact that it'll be successful and it won't create other problems that we already have in that area. So that's part of what's good about this appeal and the fact that everyone in this room weighed in on it. I think that this is not easy because we're looking at folks to come and invest in our community. I applaud the Planning Commission for their work. I have never seen the Planning Commission actually be so diligent, frankly. Tremendous amount of recommendations and improvements, and the owner has met those. So I just want to, prior to this vote, just say thank you to all in this room. We've heard every one of you, and every one of you have a legitimate concern. It's just our job up here to make a difference. So I appreciate everyone's being here tonight. Thank you.
Well, we have a motion on the floor, and it looks like we have no more comments from this dais, so we are open to vote.
The motion carries with 4 yeses, 2 noes, and Reynolds recused.
Thank you, and for me, just to clarify, just the floor space is really what it comes down to it for me. I want your business here in town. I'm glad you're going to be here. Just, we need to listen to our commission and set precedents for that. So, thank you. The motion's passed. Now we can invite the mayor back and get this thing done. They're like, yeah, he's back.
Okay, moving on to item number 13.
Mr. Mayor, staff respectfully request that this item be continued until the June 15th meeting.
Okay. With that, meeting adjourned.
Sorry I made fun of your singing.